The gods found their lost cradle, only to realize the babies had spent the last millennium building a slaughterhouse. Grand Admiral Kalen of the Primarchs stared down from his 12-foot height, his psionic aura radiating a sickening, warm, paternal glow. At his feet stood the Kalian delegation. They had just unsealed their pressurized armor. The seals popped with a sharp hiss. The heavily filtered, sterile air of the Apex station rushed over their exposed faces, faces that were perfect, miniature, degraded mirrors of Kalen's own. The silence in the colossal chamber wasn't shock. It was a suffocating, ancient recognition. Truth is, nobody knew the Kalians existed a month ago. Hidden deep within a caustic nebula, they were a ghost story whispered by navigational hazard boys. Then the Vorkral hegemony got greedy. They detected the dense resource veins hidden in the gas clouds and sent an expansionist fleet to annex the supposedly primitive sector. It was supposed to be a standard harvest. Instead, it was an extermination. The Kalians didn't negotiate. They didn't broadcast warnings or demands. Their response was purely mathematical. Logic fleets executed surgical decapitation strikes that evaporated the Vorkral command tier in less than 4 hours. The hegemony's mighty armada was systematically butchered, their supply lines severed in total silence, forcing a humiliated, blood-soaked retreat. The galaxy watched the unedited feeds in cold terror. What happens when the infirm toddlers of the universe turn out to be the most efficient killers in the stars? That unprecedented violence brought them here, to the apex. The Primarchs, the towering, the telepathic arbiters of galactic law, had summoned the victors and the vanquished to enforce a peace treaty. Commander Vial of the Kalian Forge stood rigid, his neck aching as he looked up at the golden-armored giants surrounding them. His lungs burned slightly in the alien atmosphere, a harsh reminder of his people's fleeting mortality. A Kalian lived 150 years before the decay strain ravaged their cells. The giants looking down at him counted their ages in millennia. The medical scanners lining the arbitration hall chimed, a soft, melodic sequence that betrayed the horrific truth. Kalen stepped forward. The floor trembled under his immense mass. He didn't reach for a weapon. He reached out with a massive, gauntleted hand, his face twisting into something far worse than anger or disgust: pity. The genetic readouts floated in the air above them in crisp blue light. Exact matches. The Kalians were the remnants of a Primarch colony ship, lost eons before the current age. But they were stunted, cut off from the psionic network, afflicted by a cellular rot that capped their height and crippled their minds. To the Primarchs, Vial and his lethal officers were not a sovereign military force. They were damaged goods. Biological orphans, Kalen whispered, his voice resonating directly inside Vial's skull. The telepathic intrusion felt like a physical violation, heavy and suffocatingly gentle. A galaxy's masters return to claim their children, but the children have long since forgotten how to pray. Vial didn't flinch. He just watched the Primarch High Command shift their posture. The tension in the room mutated. The giants weren't looking at a rogue nation capable of slaughtering an empire. They were looking at sick infants who had found a loaded gun. "We will reclaim your system," Kalen announced, the decree echoing through the vast, cold chamber. "You will be brought under total guardianship. The sickness in your blood will be managed. This is not a negotiation. It is a medical intervention." Vial didn't blink. The crushing weight of Kalen's telepathic intrusion pressed against his skull, a suffocating heat that tasted like copper and forced submission down his throat. It was the perversion of a parental instinct, twisted into absolute dominance. The Primarchs didn't see a civilization forged by brutal necessity. They saw a genetic defect that needed to be locked in a sterile, padded room. But Vielle knew something the giants didn't. Biological determinism didn't dictate survival, violence did. "We reject your guardianship," Vielle said. His voice was flat, no tremor, no rage, just the cold, mechanical precision of a Kalian officer doing the math. "We are not your children, we are the masters of the forge." Kalen sighed. The sound was like a localized tectonic shift, vibrating through the metal deck plates and rattling up the bones in Vale's legs. The Grand Admiral raised a massive hand, dismissing the defiance as a toddler throwing a tantrum. "Mobilize the suppression fleets," Kalen projected to the armored guards lining the towering walls. "Equip non-lethal stasis webbing. We are not going to war. We are retrieving our sick." Ironically, that arrogance was exactly what Vielle had counted on. Vielle clenched his jaw, biting down hard on a molared microtransmitter. The sickening crunch of the device was swallowed by the ambient hum of the station. A hyper-compressed burst of data cut through the heavily shielded communication grid. It didn't broadcast a plea or a warning. It broadcast a single, chilling command code. "Execute." Out in the cold black, just beyond the sensor range of the apex, space tore open. They didn't arrive with the majestic, sweeping grace of the Primarch vessels. The Kalian logic fleets bled into reality like jagged shrapnel ripping through silk. Thousands of angular, matte black warships dropped out of stealth, their drives burning a fierce, silent blue against the dark. They were microscopic compared to the towering gold dreadnoughts of their ancestors, but there was no wasted space on their hulls. Every inch was designed for lethality. For a civilization that lived less than 2 centuries, every second was a countdown, and every battle was a frantic fight against extinction. Total war was their only survival mechanism for the weak. Alarms finally screamed through the apex. Red warning lights bathed the arbitration hall, washing out the crisp blue of the genetic holographic displays and painting the giants in the color of fresh blood. Kalen turned slowly toward the massive observation viewport. The starfield was suddenly choked with Kalian steel. Their formations were tight, flawless, and deeply terrifying. They were already locking targeting lasers onto the joints of the Primarch station, calculating structural stress points with the exact same cold math that had annihilated the Vorkral Empire days before. Truth is, the Primarchs had spent thousands of years meditating on the nature of the universe. The Kalians had spent their short, frantic lives figuring out how to kill everything in it. Kalen watched the approaching swarm. He didn't order the shields to maximum. He didn't command his gunners to return fire. His mind, vast and ancient, simply couldn't process the reality of the physical threat. The giant reached out with his psionic senses, feeling the cold, silent minds of millions of Kalians, entirely devoid of the reverence he expected. With a slow, pitying shake of his enormous head, Kalen accessed the station's tactical log. "Update threat assessment," Kalen commanded, his voice rumbling with misplaced paternal calm. "Classification, Level 1. It is nothing more than a nursery riot." Outside the glass, the slaughterhouse opened its doors.